Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria.
Yeah.
This is a big one.
Yeah.
This is a real turning point in the region.
Absolutely.
And to make sure we're giving you the best possible look at this.
Yeah.
We're working with 2 news articles, one from Fox News, one from CNN,
Okay.
plus some personal notes,
Right.
just to kind of keep everything as
Unbiased.
unbiased as possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we even start unpacking all this, though,
Yeah.
what comes to mind when you think about Syria?
Well, it's a country that's been embroiled in this brutal civil war for years now.
Yeah.
And it's really a proxy war for a lot of different global powers.
Yeah.
And this recent development could have
Oh, yeah.
major ramifications for the entire Middle East.
Yeah, definitely. It's been in the headlines
Yeah.
for all the wrong reasons for so long.
Unfortunately.
So let's get to the heart of it. Bashar al-Assad, the now former president
Yeah.
of Syria, has fled the country. He is currently in Russia under asylum.
Seeking asylum, yeah.
Both our sources agree on that.
Right.
There's a little wrinkle, though, when it comes to the timing of
Interesting.
exactly when he left.
Yeah, the timing is interesting for sure.
Fox News suggests that he fled as rebels were closing in on Damascus,
Yeah.
while CNN places his departure
Right.
after the rebels had already taken the capital.
So already in control of Damascus.
This is where it gets really interesting for me.
Yeah.
This difference, even if it seems small,
Yeah.
could change how we understand everything that
Yeah.
happened.
For sure.
Was it a desperate escape or a calculated move
Right.
after he knew it was over?
Mm.
What do you think?
It's certainly a detail worth pondering. You know, if he left before the rebels took Damascus,
Yeah.
it suggests a fear of imminent capture,
Uh-huh.
and potentially a more chaotic situation.
Yeah.
However, if he left after the rebels were already in control, it could point to a negotiated exit,
Oh, interesting.
perhaps with the involvement of Russia.
Okay.
And this distinction could impact how we interpret the actions
Right.
of other global players and their roles in the conflict.
So Assad is out.
Mm-hmm.
The end of a 50-year family dynasty,
Wow.
which is just wild to think about.
Yeah, it's incredible.
His father,
Right?
Hafez al-Assad, was in power for 30 years before him.
Yeah, a long legacy.
So who takes over?
Well, this is where things get interesting.
This rebel coalition is a
Right.
fascinating mix.
Yeah, the group that's leading the charge is Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS.
HTS, okay.
And this is where things get a little complicated.
Yeah.
They were formerly affiliated with Al-Qaeda,
Wow.
which, as you can imagine, raises eyebrows
Yeah,
around the world.
And their leader, Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, he didn't mince words
No, he did not.
after Assad's fall.
Right.
He called it a victory for the entire Islamic nation
Mm-hmm.
and spoke about Syria being purified and recovering. Yeah. What do you make of his statement?
Well, these are powerful words.
Yeah.
And I think they provide some real insight into HTS's ideology
Okay.
and potential vision for Syria.
Yeah.
And while the statement itself could be interpreted as a call for unity and a fresh start,
Sure.
it also raises concerns about the group's interpretation of Islamic governance and their approach to inclusivity.
And it gets even more complex because HTS isn't the only group
Right.
in this coalition.
Right.
Our sources mention several others,
Mm-hmm.
many of which are considered radical Islamists.
Yeah, and that's a big question mark.
Will this coalition even hold together?
Right.
What will their rule actually look like?
It's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, a lot of unknowns for sure.
Yeah. The composition of this rebel coalition is critical
Okay.
to understanding what might happen next.
Yeah.
The presence of these other radical Islamist groups raises questions about internal power struggles and the potential for a more hardline approach to governance.
Okay, so we've got Assad gone.
Right?
We've got a new and potentially unstable leadership taking over.
Yeah.
But there's another piece to this that really hit me.
What's that?
Saidnaya prison.
Oh, yeah.
This was Syria's most notorious prison.
Right.
And the scenes of its liberation by rebel forces,
I mean,
intense.
the images and accounts coming out of Sinai are really powerful reminders of the brutality of the Assad regime.
The CNN article described rebel forces using sledgehammers
Wow.
to break down hidden cells.
Oh, my gosh.
Hundreds of men emerging from these horrifically overcrowded spaces.
That's awful.
One free detainee told CNN that he was in prison just for dodging military service
Wow.
and described being hit with a hammer by guards.
That's terrible.
These accounts align with reports from organizations like the UN and Amnesty International,
Right.
which have documented widespread torture and human rights abuse in Syrian prisons under Assad.
So this isn't just one-off reports. We're talking about systemic abuses.
And then there are the social media videos.
Yeah.
Women and children being freed, people desperately searching for their loved ones.
It's heartbreaking.
It's a visceral and emotional reminder
Absolutely.
of the human cost of this conflict.
Yeah, it really emphasizes the urgent need for humanitarian aid and the immense challenge of rebuilding a nation shattered by years of violence and oppression.
Okay, so we've got this new leadership with a complicated past,
Right.
the legacy of a brutal regime.
Yeah.
And then there are the reactions
Oh, yeah.
from all over the world.
Right.
Everyone is watching this unfold.
Yeah.
And their responses
Absolutely.
are really telling.
I think the global community is weighing in, and the reactions are diverse. It reflects the complexity of this event and its potential impact on international relations. Yeah. President Biden, for example, called the fall of Assad an act of justice while acknowledging the uncertainty ahead.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see how he's navigating this, given that the U.S. has designated HTS as a terrorist organization.
That's right. It puts the U.S. in a really tough spot here.
Yeah.
They want stability in Syria.
Of course.
But engaging with HTS directly would be a huge shift in policy.
A major shift.
It makes you wonder what their next move will be. What are your thoughts?
It's a complex situation with no easy answers.
Yeah.
The U.S. has to balance its commitment to combating terrorism with the need to prevent further instability in Syria.
Okay.
They also have to consider the potential influence of other players in the region, such as Russia and Iran.
Speaking of Russia, they've been a strong supporter of Assad.
A key ally.
Throughout this whole conflict.
Absolutely.
And now they've granted him asylum.
Right.
What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's a strategic move that solidifies Russia's position as a key power broker in the Middle East.
Interesting.
They've maintained a naval base in Syria for years, and their support for Assad has allowed them to project their influence in the region.
So with Assad out of the picture but still under their wing, how do you think Russia will try to shape what happens next in Syria?
Well, they'll likely try to ensure that any new government in Syria is friendly to their interests. They may also use their leverage to try and broker a peace agreement that favors their allies.
Like a giant chessboard, isn't it?
It is a geopolitical chess match, for sure.
Everyone making their moves, trying to anticipate what the others will do.
Absolutely.
And then you have the EU pledging to help rebuild a Syria that's safe for all minorities.
Yeah, that's a tall order, considering the sectarian violence that's been a major part of this conflict.
That's a tall order. What do you think about that?
Well, the EU's commitment to rebuilding is important, but it will require a sustained effort and a willingness to address the root causes of the conflict. It's not just about rebuilding physical infrastructure. It's about fostering reconciliation and creating a society where all groups feel safe and represented.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then there are the reactions from within the region itself. Saudi Arabia expressed satisfaction with Assad's fall, but emphasized non-interference in Syria's affairs.
Interesting.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think their stance reflects the complex regional dynamics. Saudi Arabia sees Iran as a rival and has been wary of their influence in Syria. However, they also want to avoid getting dragged into another conflict.
It seems like everyone is treading cautiously.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
Trying to figure out where they stand in this new landscape. Even the Taliban congratulated the Syrian people and HTS.
Wow, that's noteworthy.
What does that tell you?
I think the Taliban's statement is noteworthy because it highlights the shifting alliances and the potential for cooperation between different Islamist groups.
Interesting.
That also raises questions about their own ambitions and their potential role in the region.
Okay, so we've got this mix of global players with their own agendas. And we've got this new leadership in Syria that's raising a lot of questions.
A lot of uncertainty.
But what about the Syrian people?
Yeah.
What does this all mean for them?
That's the big question.
Will this actually be a new beginning for Syria?
Right.
Or is it just another form of authoritarian rule waiting to happen?
It's hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
There's potential for positive change for a more democratic and inclusive Syria. But there are also real risks of continued instability, violence, and oppression, even if it comes in a different form.
Yeah. It's hard to be optimistic.
It is.
After everything they've been through.
They've suffered so much.
But maybe, just maybe,
yeah,
this could be a turning point.
It could be.
Towards a better future. What do you think the average Syrian citizen is hoping for right now?
I think they're hoping for peace, stability, and the chance to rebuild their lives. Yeah. They've endured unimaginable suffering.
They have.
And they deserve a chance to heal and to create a better future for themselves and their families.
And what about the international community? What role can they play in helping to make that happen?
I think the international community has a responsibility to provide humanitarian aid, support the rebuilding process, and promote dialogue and reconciliation. They also need to hold those responsible for war crimes accountable and ensure that justice is served.
We've already talked about the EU's commitment to rebuilding, but it's going to take a lot more than that.
Absolutely.
What else needs to happen?
It will require a coordinated and sustained effort from multiple countries and organizations. It will also require engaging with all segments of Syrian society, including those who may have been marginalized or excluded in the past.
We can't forget that this conflict has created a massive refugee crisis.
Absolutely. Millions of Syrians displaced.
Yeah.
Both internally and across borders.
Absolutely. And so addressing the needs of these refugees will be crucial for any long-term solution in Syria.
Yeah.
It's not just about providing food and shelter, but also about ensuring access to education, healthcare, and opportunities for livelihoods.
Absolutely.
You mentioned accountability earlier. And we've seen horrific evidence of human rights abuses under the Assad regime.
Under his rule,
What can be done to ensure that those responsible for these crimes don't just walk away?
That's a critical point.
Yeah.
Impunity for war crimes would only perpetuate the cycle of violence and injustice.
Exactly.
The international community must work together to investigate and prosecute those responsible, regardless of their position or affiliation.
Yeah. There are also those who are still missing.
Right.
Like Austin Tice.
Yeah.
The American journalist who disappeared in Syria back in 2012.
That's right.
His case is a reminder that even as we try to make sense of these huge political shifts, there are individual stories of loss and suffering.
Absolutely.
That haven't been resolved.
And we can't forget about those individuals and their families.
Yeah.
We need to keep them in our thoughts and continue to advocate for their release, or at the very least, for information about their fate.
Yeah.
The pursuit of justice must include a commitment to finding those who are still missing and holding those responsible accountable.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The fall of Assad, the complicated situation with the new leadership, global reactions, the challenges of rebuilding, and the ongoing need for justice and accountability.
Absolutely.
It's a lot to take in.
It is, and it's only the beginning of what will likely be a long and difficult journey. There will be more twists and turns, more challenges and setbacks. But it's important to keep the conversation going, to stay informed, and to continue to ask these tough questions.
What I'm hearing is that while this is a major turning point, it's not a happy ending.
No, it's not a neat and tidy resolution.
Yeah.
There's a long road ahead for Syria, and there's a lot that could still go wrong.
A lot of uncertainty.
A lot of uncertainty.
So much we don't know.
Absolutely.
About what the future holds.
Yeah, but even amidst the uncertainty and the challenges, there's also hope. The Syrian people have shown incredible resilience and determination, and the international community has a chance to support their efforts to build a more just and peaceful future.
Speaking of the international community,
right?
We can't ignore the role of global powers in all of this.
Absolutely.
It's like this massive web of competing interests and alliances.
It's a complex web.
And Syria's right in the middle of it.
Syria is at the epicenter.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The events in Syria have the potential to reshape alliances and rivalries in the region and beyond.
Okay.
It's important to understand these power dynamics to fully grasp the complexities of what's happening.
It feels like we're witnessing a major power shift in the Middle East right now.
Definitely.
What do you think this means for the existing alliances and rivalries?
I think the fall of Assad definitely throws a wrench into things.
Yeah.
Russia's influence is likely to grow, while the U.S. might need to reevaluate its approach to the region.
Yeah.
We're already seeing signs of this with the cautious response from the Biden administration.
And then there's Iran.
Oh, yeah, big question mark.
They've been a key backer of Assad.
A major supporter.
Providing both military and financial support.
Absolutely.
What happens to their influence now?
That's a big unknown.
Yeah.
Iran will undoubtedly try to maintain its foothold in Syria, whether it's through supporting elements within the new leadership or forging alliances with other groups. This could lead to increased tensions with countries like Saudi Arabia and Israel, who are wary of Iran's regional ambitions.
It's like everyone is holding their breath.
Yeah, it's a tense situation.
Waiting to see what happens next.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in the midst of all this geopolitical maneuvering, we have to remember the Syrian people.
Right.
They're the ones who have suffered the most.
They've borne the brunt of this conflict.
Throughout this conflict.
Absolutely. The focus needs to shift towards humanitarian aid, reconstruction and reconciliation.
Yeah.
The international community has a responsibility to support the Syrian people in rebuilding their lives and their country.
But rebuilding a nation after years of such brutal conflict isn't easy.
No, it's a monumental task.
What are some of the biggest challenges they'll face?
Well, reconciliation is a massive undertaking. The scars of war run deep. And bridging the divides between different communities will take time, trust, and a commitment to addressing past grievances. Then there's the issue of accountability. Ensuring that those responsible for war crimes are held accountable is crucial for achieving a lasting peace.
It's clear that there's a long and difficult road ahead for Syria.
It's a long road.
This isn't a simple case of one regime falling and a new one taking its place.
It's much more complicated than that.
The situation is complex.
Very complex.
With multiple actors, both inside and outside Syria, vying for influence.
Absolutely. And this complexity is reflected in the diverse reactions from the global community. We see a mixture of cautious optimism, expressions of concern, and calls for non-interference.
It's a delicate balancing act.
It is.
With the potential for both progress and setbacks.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway?
I think the key takeaway
you want our listeners to walk away with
is that the situation in Syria is far from over.
Yeah.
This is a critical juncture, and the choices made in the coming weeks and months will have a profound impact on the future of the country and the entire region.
It's a lot to think about.
It is.
And I think this deep dive has given us a lot to consider.
A lot to unpack.
It's easy to get caught up in the headlines and the political analysis.
Absolutely.
But ultimately, this is about the lives of millions of people who have endured unimaginable suffering.
That's right. We can't lose sight of that human dimension. As we continue to follow the events in Syria, we must remember the individuals and families whose lives have been forever altered by this conflict.
It's true.
Their stories deserve to be heard, and their voices must be included in any efforts to build a better future.
This has been an incredibly informative and thought-provoking deep dive.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
As we explore this pivotal moment in history.
It's been a pleasure.
We encourage you to continue learning.
Yeah, stay engaged.
About the situation in Syria.
Absolutely.
Stay engaged.
Absolutely.
And to consider how you can contribute to a more peaceful and just world.
That's what it's all about.